Welcome to Next League's Know What Is Next series, where we focus on sports technology as seen through the lens of revenue generation. I'm your host, Dave Nugent. Our guest today is Kelly Pracht.
Hey, thank you for having me here. Really excited to talk with you. For me, for about 20 years, I led some of the biggest and most advanced tech in the world, delivering compute in all kinds of forms, from small devices to computers that you use at your desktop, all the way up to supercomputers and little things on the edge as well. But the truth is, I'm also a longtime sports fan, which is not usually what you expect out of a longtime techie like me. I grew up as the coach's daughter in West Texas. I played sports. I watched my brothers play sports. I think I was taught to throw a spiral before the age of 8. And I have 2 grown kids. My husband and I coached every sport that they ever wanted to play. So as you can see, sports has been a huge part of my life, as well as tech. And that's been the running theme of the life of Kelly for as long as I know it.
We do want to dive into sports, obviously, because it's going to be it is and will be continue to be a huge part of your business. I'm fascinated by your background and some of the things that you were doing at HP. You and I have talked about this in the past a little bit, but can you frame this? I think that context is really helpful when it comes to the complexity of the technology that you're developing now. Can you talk a little bit about that background?
About what I did at HP?
Yeah,
absolutely. So I was always in research and development, which means we were always building the latest and greatest thing. We were doing cutting edge things, groundbreaking things, sometimes top secret things. We had to keep, skunk work projects quiet and sign a lot of NDAs, just because we were always doing something that was new. And that was the beauty of working at such a big company that was doing a lot of things, but also being in research and development. So I had a mindset to always look for not just doing good development for products that people want, but also to think about the future about 3 years in advance. And I was so fortunate to really live almost a startup life within a big company, which is a safe way to learn how to do startup, but also understand what process is, understand what true manufacturing is. And now I get to apply it to nVenue, to my own journey as an entrepreneur.
You said you almost had a startup mindset inside of your world at HP. How big a group were you working with? Because I know around the size of the group you're working with now, was that still a pretty good sized team of people that you were working with then?
Yeah, my last project before I decided to join the life of as an entrepreneur was essentially a startup where we decided to make the world's first ARM supercomputer. And so I worked with, I think, 10 external partners in the industry, and also with over 300 people within HP were contributing to this startup, if you will.
That's a big startup, by the way.
Yeah, we were, and that ultimately led to working with the government Department of Energy to make the first exascale computer, which actually just launched this year. My previous team had some great success at HP in launching that, and I was on the forefront of that 3-4 years ago. And so it went from small teams where we had an idea up to teams the size of 300 plus.
Wow. So it seems like you were dealing with lots of big data sets. At what point did you start thinking, because of your sports, your love of sports, at what point did you start thinking, hey, if we did this, there might be some kind of practical application? And I know you're a big baseball fan. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it actually came, I remember the moment quite well. It was in Frankfurt, Germany. I was there for a supercomputing conference where, the world's leading supercomputing experts get together and talk about things. And one of the things was machine learning. And I was captivated. We had a really good speaker up on the stage, and he was talking about the experiences of machine learning and what it can do. And normally this group is all about, very very technical views on the machine learning or the compute or the bandwidth or the switches. But in this case, this guy got up there and he was talking about predicting crime and hotspots in San Francisco and using supercomputers and machines to to see where this happens. And then he started talking about and what our customers in the weather field were doing, and how they were using all of the live data, floating around the world to tell what was going to happen in weather. And it just so happened that my favorite team, the Astros, were playing, and here I am. I logged onto the Wi-Fi purely just to check the Astros score, and that was when the moment came. It's like, we're predicting live weather. Wouldn't it be cool if we could use all of this data coming from the field to predict what's going to happen in the things that I care about as a fan?
That's great. And baseball is a really good sport for it, right? It's a statistics rich environment. I mean, all sports are these days, but baseball in particular has a lot of different data points to it.
That's right.
And that's just basically why you decided to focus on, aside from your love of the Astros, you started with baseball, I think, right?
We started with baseball purely just because that was it was the most natural to launch into. It also is just the one that I love best. Is my team, even though we're all sports fans and sports lovers, we all have our little niche. And since I was the one creating the initial code, it just made a lot of sense for me to jump in on baseball. And I think it was June, and what better time than June to work on baseball.
Maybe talk about microbetting as a concept, and then talk about nVenue and where nVenue sort of fits into the microbetting ecosystem.
Yeah, so one thing that I looked at, and I think this was partially due to my experience at HP, one of the things I was blessed with at HP was being able to see all aspects of the business. I was also leading teams. I was able to lead some product teams, some sales teams, some product management teams. And what I learned through that piece of my experience at HP was to watch what people do and not just create tech for the sake of tech. And what I did for years after kind of having, prior to that aha moment of the machine learning, what I was doing for years ahead of that was I was watching fans, and I was watching what fans actually do. What do I do? What do my brothers do? What do the people around me do? And I think years, that's all that was on my mind, is what do fans do? And it's so clear what we do. We are all about that next moment. It's about what's about to happen. And so over that time frame, I'm looking at all of the innovation that's coming into play. It's really cool to be able to order things from your seat, and it's really nice to know what a good exit plan is. And I love exit velocity. That's kind of interesting. I mean, but it wasn't satisfying what I wanted as a fan, which is what's going to happen in the next moment. And that's where the microbet enters, because the next moment is all that matters when you're watching the sport. Like take what we hope will happen tonight for Aaron Judge. We're not talking about the home runs he hit 2 weeks ago. We care about that home run tonight. Will it happen tonight? And do I get to see it? And that's the entire premise of what a microbet is. What will happen in this next moment? It's allowing a fan like me or like you to engage in the thrill of the sport. And that's everything.
Talk about a little bit about why this has not previously existed. What are some of the technical challenges to somebody participating in a wager on an event that's in during live game action?
Right. There's quite a few, actually. So once I had that realization that fans want to be in the moment, it just made sense. Okay, well, let's create something that's in the moment. This was a while ago. This was 2018 or 2017, 2018. And so I started to look around like, let's create an in the moment experience. Well, guess what? There was nobody that was doing it. And so I started to try to figure out why. And the data from the field, that's relatively nascent. This massive influx of data coming from the field. There's always been like a ball and a strike, but getting it at scale with the live stream of the game as it happens, very, very nascent. So that's new. And so development on top of that tech that our friends at Sport Radar or Genius Sports deliver to the world, pretty new. So it's not a mature market. The next thing is machine learning. So I had some teams of machine learning folks work with me and for me at HP. And I remember asking them a question about baseball. Like how might we solve this problem? And the typical ML response is put all of the data in a big bucket, if you will, and let's run models on it. Well, guess what? When you run models like that in a big bucket, it takes a freaking long time. And so we had nascent data coming from the field. We had a viewpoint of slow machine learning. And those two combined meant we didn't have any products that did it. Now, you could also say there was no inspiration to do this because PASPA, it was 2018 when we founded the company, which was prior to PASPA being repealed. You could call that serendipitous if you want. We just wanted fans to be able to engage, but there was, before PASPA was repealed, there was really no need to create something like this. So we just had a lot of doors open up quickly, which from data to advances in machine learning and then we can innovate on top of that, and a huge need. So that's the things that, one of the reasons we haven't seen this before.
Yeah, so maybe to back up a little bit for folks who are less familiar with some of these topics that you and I have talked about in the past, the concept of betting on an outcome, right? Who's going to win a game? That's existed for a long time, and the latency of data is less important when you're talking about an outcome, right? Something that happens at the end, or even something that happens at the end of a half or a quarter. Those types of bets have been available for a little while. The idea that you could make a bet, though, based on, well, will the next pitch be a ball or a strike, or will the batter put the ball in play? Things that you need a much shorter window of time to not only receive the data, but also, to your point on machine learning, provide a question to a bettor, right, that makes sense within the context of the sport. Those are the things that you're describing that are newer and were not previously possible, right?
Absolutely. And, as we've gotten closer and more ingrained into this industry, we found that they did do a few live bets, will the Jets make this field goal? I'll use Jets for you, Dave.
Thank you.
Will the Jets make this field goal? But what we found out, and this is crazy, we found out that there were people on the ground at the Jets game with a phone calling back to the risk management team or the team empowering the bet. So the bets used to be, if you did see a live bet, it was literally done incredibly manually. From a dude on the field saying, "Oh, they made it," and calling back the results. So if there were live bets that you saw, it was really likely due to a very manual process. And now we can unlock that because we have this data stream coming from the field that replaces that guy with the phone. And we have machine learning in place now that replaces the guy who says, I think it's about a 72% chance that he makes it, so let's convert that to a line. We can do that all with technology today, and very, very, very fast.
Again, good segue into maybe some of the tech that you have. Can you talk about Next Play Live, the API around that, the stuff you're doing with Apple, so that we can give maybe real use cases around what people actually can see on Friday nights, right? Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So what our tech does, just the brief overview, is we take that live stream from the field. We have millions of sports models that are already built for every player and situation. And we run those machine learning models using the supercompute technology that I spoke of earlier. And we deliver probabilities about the question that the fan cares about. So we put it in context. And we deliver that in a couple of ways. We deliver it to Apple TV and the MLB network every Friday night. And we deliver them a wealth of information of probabilities about the next that next play, that what's going to happen with this at bat. And they use that on screen to engage and add more predictive content to what fans are watching. That's on the bottom right of every Apple TV game this entire year, and for every single pitch. So it's wonderful. Now, what we love about that is, people scratch their head and they ask questions and is that right? And I didn't think so. I think this guy is much more likely to get on base. So we're naturally fueling this engagement with the numbers, and that's amazing, because the next step and what's coming, and in some cases already available in different environments, is to be able to bet on that, to say I don't agree with that, or I think it'll be more. And that's what betting is all about when you're talking about this live sports betting. So our product, those probabilities, are also being fed into the betting world to create lines and odds for next plays in sports, and not just baseball, but also football, which we're demoing now, going live with NBA this year. And we're looking to do that exact same thing and replicate it to sports like NASCAR and Formula One and golf and tennis, because every single fan, that's what they want to do. They want to engage.
Maybe talk about the complexity. You brought up a bunch of different sports, all of which operate completely differently, right? So there are what we in the business typically refer to as stop and go sports, right? Like football and baseball, where the action has pauses, right? Like there are pauses between pitches. There are downs in football during which, while they're huddling or whatever, there's no action going on. So you have a moment from a technology perspective to actually have the algorithm consider what to offer as a bet and provide, or in the case of Apple TV, provide probability around what historical data or the model says might happen. How do you then apply that to a sport like basketball or hockey or motorsports, where the data is coming in real time, right? There are many fewer pauses. How do you have to consider that when you think about the tech around that?
Well, the secret to doing it all, and this is what I tell the team every single day, the secret is get into the mind of the fan. If you can replicate the mind of the fan, you have your answer. Because Dave, if you're watching basketball, you don't stop and wait to think. When the whistle blows, you don't wait. You don't wait until there's a free throw and you have a moment to think. So we try and get into your mind and think, what are you thinking of during this live play? In basketball, we may be watching Luka. Always a Texas fan here, so watching the Mavs, and we get into our mind for basketball and we think, what are we thinking about Luka? And so we'll modify what we're offering as a micro-betting moment to what the fan's thinking. I think Luka. I think in this next 2 minutes, I think he's gonna, hit 2 3-pointers, or like whatever it is that we might be thinking. We don't base our micro bets off of just the play. We think of it off of the fan, and sometimes that means we chunk up new time segments, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. Maybe it's a first to X type of moment, but it's all in the moment, and it's only powerful if it's what you're already doing. If we make what you're already doing possible through our technology, and that unlocks us from being driven by stop and start moments. But it also makes things hard, because we have to find ways to take that data that's coming to us and kind of morph it into a new method. And that's the fun part of what we're doing, but it's also very, very difficult.
Well, I was going to say it's especially difficult because what you've done with this business and this technology is you've removed the human, right? So it's one thing for me to say, what's the likelihood that the Knicks are going to turn the ball over on this next possession, which as a Knicks fan, I can tell you the likelihood's probably pretty high. But it's another thing and I'm kidding, I love the Knicks. But it's another thing for a machine to understand what opportunity to present based on not only data, but subject matter expertise, right? You sort of have to understand the sport to know to your point, to know what's relevant to a fan and what they would want to engage with. And that is, you're adding, you've referenced this a couple of times. It's hard, right? Like as you add on sports, you're adding infinite numbers of possibilities to not only probability as it relates to historical data, but also what should you present to a fan, right? What do they want to actually engage with? When you're doing that with a machine, there's a tremendous amount of complexity to that, right?
Absolutely. And so, if you just take a feed and create a machine learning model and generate probabilities, then you generate all of the types of bets that could happen that are possible based on those probabilities. We call that a fire hose of bets. By the way, like one game in baseball could generate from us, almost 15,000 bets a game. I think at football and basketball, we're somewhere around 10,000 bets a game. But you don't want to bet 10,000 times in the game, and neither do I. So that's where our smarts comes into play. It's more than just math on the numbers. It's also saying these are the moments that really matter. For example, tonight with Aaron Judge and the Yankees game, we have incredible relevance triggers set on anytime we see a home run trend, and anytime a home run will change the course of the game. Like, you're going to care more about a home run if it's changing the game story, or if it's a walk-off. In this case, you're going to care and you're going to watch because of Aaron Judge. So take that fire hose of bets that's coming out, and we apply our sports smarts to that, so you can see the right ones. But how do we get that? With baseball, subject matter expertise is easy within our crew. For football, my team, hands down, knows football as well or better than anybody in the world. I mean, love football, and we know what's relevant. But then you take a sport that we're not as familiar with. We're just not as familiar with hockey. A few of our folks are, but we're consulting folks in the hockey industry, coaches, and folks that can come in and give us the mind of the fan and help us apply those smarts so that it makes sense. And that's the name of the game, is combining tech with sports, which is really not done very often.
Yeah, there are a lot of folks in the industry who are very, very excited about microbetting and the potential for microbetting. And you're not the only ones, but I would love you to talk maybe about Simple Bet and Better, and where you think you fit into the ecosystem overall. There's obviously, there's a lot of conversation around this now, right? There's a fair amount of money that is sort of coming into the space. Maybe talk about the space in a broader sense than just nVenue.
You got it. I have a lot of thoughts on this. First of all, we always tip our hat over to Simple Bet. Being a first mover is hard and difficult, and they've been paving the way. We both were founded the same year and began work, and the team has done great in getting microbets out there and advancing it. So we love that. We do very similar things. We think we do things a little differently, but one way or another, we're generating microbets out to a space that we foresee in the next 3 years will need something on the order of 1 billion microbets a week. So this is a case of, a few more players is fine. Like, there's so much room for people to play along with sports. So we do see a few others coming on and saying, we do this. We see some folks kind of doing a DIY type of action, if you will, like, hey, I can do that. But the truth is, what I think is best for the industry is a few things. I think one, several players, I think, is healthy. It's a Coke and Pepsi thing, if you will. And we need both. We need HPM, we need Dell. Thinking of my old days, there's other players. We need Apple. Like, Apple came on and shook things up. So we'll love the industry competition. But what I do see is ecosystem is lacking. If we all try and do the same things, then we are not going to innovate. So if everybody just focuses on just the basic mechanics of it, in 3 years, we're just going to have the basic mechanics of a microbet. And that's not going to be as exciting as this industry should be. If we start to build the ecosystem to have the simple bets, the in-venues, and if folks start to lever our expertise, then they can start to innovate the new games that make sense. Like we talked earlier, you and I, about how fantasy changes the experience of football. Microbets can change the experience of watching the sport, but we're not going to see that innovation until we have several players fueling the core tech like us. Now, you asked about Better, and again, our hats off. When we were creating our platform, we also developed an app back in 2019 so we could play along. And we've all along always, and that was when we were kind of focusing on B2C at that early stage in our history. We knew that somebody needed to come along and get the UX and UI right. And, love what Joey and Jake and team are doing on that respect. And by the way, that's a win-win-win yet again, because it's advancing micros, it's advancing the need for micros, it's advancing the industry to start to need and adopt new players such as nVenue. So we're excited about it because we know it's right. We're excited about it because we're a part of that ecosystem, and we just see lots of wins here.
You have a tremendous amount of experience in technology and in data, but what have you learned as you've dove headfirst into the startup space, into the microbetting space over the past, I don't know, year or so? Maybe talk a little bit about the things that you didn't know or that you didn't anticipate that you've learned since you had a product out in the marketplace.
The list is long. It's a crazy journey. Just last night, my co-founder Drew and I we shared an image that we found on the internet that showed the life of an entrepreneur, and it was literally just, what have I done? Oh, this is great. Why? I mean, it's a very bouncy journey that's very emotional. That like the wins are amazing. We signed our first betting contract a week and a half ago, and that win was amazing. But then the next day, we didn't get that one, or it's a journey that I did not expect it to be as chaotic and emotional as it is, right? I mean, I'm a technical person, pretty level-headed, always looking at option A, B, C, and D. And so in the life of an entrepreneur, it's an emotional, crazy journey I didn't expect. I didn't experience that at HP because I didn't have that same investment, even though I've always been full in and very passionate about my programs. At the same time, I was able to, maybe it just wasn't as much in my heart as this one. So,
well, as a serial entrepreneur myself, I will say, the business itself and the people in it are like children to you, right? You have a sense of ownership that's very difficult to get in any other way. And as a result, as a parent, just like being a real parent, you ride these highs and lows. There's the saying that every parent is only as happy as their least happy child. That is true, right? When you're in a business that you start yourself.
100%. And that's the thing that I didn't expect as much, just because of who I am. Other things, I've always had to, because I've been on that cutting edge of tech and having to convince folks this is the right thing, this is why it's low risk. I think what's surprising to me is the amount of opinion that you get. And it's a ton, we get opinions, we get random opinions through our website on you should do this, or I don't, opinions from folks that we care greatly about and have expertise, and we're pretty well connected at this point. So we have advisors and mentors and wonderful people that we talk to across the entire space. But it ultimately comes down as co-founders and me as a CEO on what's the right thing for the business, and really having to digest wonderful opinion from people that matter and have experience in trying to decide what's best. That's another thing that is a little newer to me, just because at HP, you always had, there was always a clear direction, at least at some point. In this case, it's what is right. And you have to have this gumption and this force of will on knowing what's right for your company. And that's a cool learning. I wouldn't trade it, but it's something I don't think you can be taught.
I agree. I think you have to go through it. Now, you came through the Comcast Accelerator program, right? How did that come to be? Did they find you? Did you find them? Maybe talk about that experience a little bit.
It was, let's see. So 2019, we had jumped from our careers. We had spent the whole year and a lot of money, our own money, to develop we did all the code for this core algorithm. We spent money on the app. We, rented an office space in Dallas, Texas. And I even got an apartment across the street and would literally go back and forth and back and forth. Lots and lots of work in 2019, planning to launch this app in April of 2020. And we all know that that's when baseball shut down due to COVID. And it's okay, we can ride this through. This is tough, So we came home, worked remote for a while, and baseball didn't come back. And investments and people that were interested dried up, and said, well, let's wait till next year because we don't know what's happening. But we'd also been getting this feedback for the prior year about that tech you have is pretty different. folks didn't really care so much about the app, even though I think it was genius. It was really that tech. As I mentioned, nobody was doing that. So when we started to show it to folks in the industry, like the MLBPA and Sport Radar, they're like, wow, nobody's doing that. So we started to get a clue that that was special. Our app was dead because there were no live sports, and we really had to sit down and say, what do we do? And we decided between April and August, somewhere in that time frame, okay, let's figure out how to make the most of this core tech that we have, which was the best decision we ever made. It was August of 2020, and we saw that NBC and Comcast had an accelerator, and it was, I hate to use the word last ditch, but really it was kind of like, well, let's try this. Like we have nothing to lose. And so we applied and we started talking to the team. We made it through one step and then one step. And next thing you know, by October of 2020, we were told we were one of 10 of thousands of companies that were chosen for this. And it was because of our tech and because of our style and because of our grit. And that fueled a whole new breath of life into us, if you will. Like, now we had a clear vision on B2B. We had, somebody that's going to help us with it. And yeah, it all kind of restarted from that moment.
That's great. And full disclosure, we are an investor in your business. And part of the reason for that is because we've always wanted to make investments in businesses started by women or people of color. If you talk about, you're a woman in tech, right? And that is that changing? Because that has not, in my experience at least, founders who are women of technology businesses have been traditionally less common, or at least less common for my visibility. Are you seeing changes there? We do some work with women in sports tech as well, and there's momentum, but are you seeing any meaningful change there?
Oh, you asked the big questions, Dave. That is a good question. We have a joke internally. There was some program that we applied to, and it said only if you're a certified woman. So I immediately jumped. Yes, I am a certified woman in tech. We love to joke about it in the team, but no, there's true hardships in it. I won't lie, and I think at some point, the industry needs to really talk them through and understand them. The first side is being taken seriously. Like, even trying to pitch our product, I've had folks say, Kelly, are you sure you know how to do this? Software's hard. Like the things that would just kind of make you probably kind of be mad. Like, I certainly have all the stories that could make you be mad, and there's the stories that could make you be sad, and it's an experience and a journey, and lots of badness out there. But there's badness out there everywhere. I don't know if I see it changing. I see a lot of still bad behavior, but we are so blessed to have folks like quite honestly, like Underdog Ventures and you guys in our world. Like it's constant encouragement and help and teaching and the things that we don't know. So there's, and our lead investors, KB Partners and Cortisone Capital, like they took the risk and they're helping grow us and mentor us. And more of that is needed. I think, now that I've gotten past the being taken seriously in sports, I had folks say, Kelly, who taught you baseball so that you could do this?
Oh God.
Yeah, that was a fun one. That was also a podcast. That was, Kelly, who did you hire to teach you baseball?
Oh God.
But now that we've gotten past the investment phase and we've gotten like the strong support of folks like yourself, now the journey that I face is being taken seriously to sell our product, and we have folks that have linked arms with us on that front as well. But I think women founders and women in tech, there's still quite a journey ahead of us. There's not a ton of change, but there is significant change. And I heard somebody say something really important, and that was, if you can see it, you can be it. And so I just think it's, one of my responsibilities is to be out there and to be present and to to help pave the way for the next gen. That's where I stand.
That's fantastic. So maybe as we wrap up, talk a little bit about what are you focused on? What's the next 12 months or so look like for the business? Are there trends you're following? Like, you've got a lot on your plate. Maybe talk about how you're spending most of your time in the short term and in the slightly longer term.
Well, I mentioned earlier that we have so much advice and guidance coming our way, and you ought to do this and you should do this. So there's literally, at any time, I probably have 4 serious big ideas that I'm vetting and trying to figure out. That's out of like maybe 5,000. So there's one big idea that does excite me. And, as we, of course, as we build our product, we're building more sports, we're building this team, and all of the things that go on underneath, the business, like building our process and our operations and our HR. Like, we can't forget that there's a lot to do in building a company, and it's not just that tech piece. It's, growing people and, hiring and all of the dot the I's, cross the T's things. While we're doing that, I'm thinking about, of course, we'll be raising again, and probably in about 12 months or so. We're also selling and trying to generate revenue and promise of revenue in clever ways. But I'm thinking also about what's next, and that's watch and bet is what's on my mind the most, because when folks can watch at the same time they bet, that's when everything comes together for the microbet. And that's the problem that I want to solve as a technologist. And I believe I have all the tools and all the relationships to solve that problem. Somebody asked me on a panel last week, what would be the best of the best thing that you would like to see happen? Like, what would shock you? And that, for me, it would be when I can bet as fast as I can think. And that's what I'm envisioning long term.
That's fantastic. Kelly, thank you so much for doing this. We could probably do multiple hours on this topic. It is a very rich one, but really appreciative that you spent a little time with us, and good luck with everything. It's an amazing space.
It's so fun. And thank you for all of your great questions and for all of your support.
Of course.
Much appreciated.